Welcome to the Edge Computing Association webinar, Secure File Access and Sharing with Edge Computing. My name is Paul Barker, and I am the Editor-in-Chief of ECA, your Edge Computing News Resource and Information Forum. ECA has been established as a result of feedback we have received from many of our subscribers to no cloud required. They pointed out that while cloud is required as a result of edge computing, it is evolving. The central cloud that we all know will always be there, but with deep learning and AI, not to mention storage and backup, processing and sharing is becoming more focused. Edge computing usage shouldn't depend on device to cloud speed, especially when time-sensitive performance is of the essence. But if we're not storing data in the cloud, what happens when people and devices need to share vital data? Is keeping everything on the device or even on the company's storage and network the best solution? The emergence of edge computing, keeping data at the edge of the cloud, is now one of the most rapid areas of growth in computing. New edge application architectures can factor in latency, location, security, and autonomy in their designs. New hybrid peer-to-peer and blockchain technologies mean that processing can stay at the edge or be shared in a less centralized manner. Change is coming, and we plan to track it and let our readers and contributors know about those changes. Your strategy now will determine the health of your sales pipeline and bottom line for years to come. Our speakers today are Tom Ward and Michelle Drolet. And before I introduce them, in order to stay punctual, please submit your questions in the chat whenever you want, and we will forward everyone's replies via email. Now, Tom is an IT industry expert who was a founding employee at ATI Technologies, Inc., and holds an MBA from the Schulich School of Business at York University. With extensive experience in both large multinational companies and small entrepreneurial startups, Tom has extensive experience understanding and bringing new technologies to market. He has received numerous channel awards, including the Reseller Choice Award from Computer Reseller News twice, and the Channel Champions Award from Computer Dealer News 4 times. Michelle Drolet is the CEO and co-founder of Towerwall, a data security company. As one of Towerwall's resident information security experts, Ms. Drolet assists organizations through the security process to help them protect critical data by the evaluation, establishment, education, and enforcement of sound information security, network security, and data security practices. Responsible for all aspects of business for Towerwall, she has more than 22 years of network and data security experience. She has leveraged that knowledge to make Towerwall a leading data security service and solution provider. Well respected in the analyst and trade community, Ms. Drolet is often published in national magazines and is a regular contributor to the Network World blog, InfoSec at your service. We saw the recent article she wrote in CIO magazine and thought she would be a great speaker for this webinar.
Thank you.
Michelle, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's just an honor to be here today. So what we wanted to talk about today is how a decentralized cloud model may actually increase security and privacy, and what that means to an organization. And I'd be happy to actually share these slides after, because I think that they would be valuable. But what we're going to go over today in the discussion topics are basically the overview of cloud vendors, the loss of control, regulations, unexpected expenses to when we're putting things in the cloud, talking about single points of failure, and the decentralization options, because it's certainly not one size fits all. So why don't we go ahead and start? So the cloud, we all know, might be the greatest success story of our generation. all cloud vendors use the same basic principles. We look at cloud vendors and they're syncing, they're copying to centralized cloud server to cluster via the internet, right? They have millions of devices connected, accessing files, storing data. But there's some things that we really need to stop and think about. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about loss of control and some of the risks. So when you have a cloud provider, basically you have complete dependency on that cloud provider. That cloud provider, as we said, is storing sensitive data. Do you know where your data is? If there's a misconfiguration of that cloud service provider, if they're doing an upgrade, if they're doing something, that misconfiguration could actually lead to a data leak. And we'll use the Dow Jones watch list database as an example. Hundreds of thousands of users' information was out and released in a matter of minutes. You look at privacy. When everything is up there, you don't know who your neighbor is. And so that privacy component, I was just actually on a panel where we were talking about security and privacy. And you must have security before you can actually have privacy. And so when you're putting your information up in those cloud providers like Google, like Amazon, like Microsoft, or even the third tier or second tier providers, they're protecting their infrastructure. You need to protect your infrastructure. And so you are responsible for your data. You're responsible for the privacy of your data. And so access control, things like that become very, very important. What happens too, and with some of the privacy laws that are going on right now, say with Google or with AWS, law enforcement actually is setting in and putting things in place where they actually can come in and ask for your specific information. So we need to think about that. What do we want to be put in the cloud and what do we want to retain on-prem? And that's where we get into that decentralization of the model of where that data is. And we haven't even touched on regulations, right? So we have GDPR. Obviously, that's over in the EU. We have the California regulation that is mirroring with limited options of GDPR. You have the Massachusetts regulation, the CMR 1700. You have HIPAA, you have SOX, you have the FFIEC. You have all sorts of different regulations where you are responsible as an organization for protecting your customers' information as well as your employees' information. And do you have that control when you're putting it up into the cloud without those specific protections or controls in place? Another thing that I just wanted to touch on, and I'm going pretty fast, but again, I'll share this presentation with you. And then what we'll also do is just go through and answer any questions that you might have. But there's a lot of unexpected expenses when you go into the cloud. A lot of organizations adopt the pay-as-you-go model. And it's very difficult to quote unquote calculate the cost. We've had many a customer just basically take everything that's on-prem in their data centers and push it up into the cloud without understanding the cost, because the board or the executive staff says we need to be in the cloud because everybody else is, and not really understanding what should be in the cloud and what should actually stay on-prem. Other expenses that can come up is the user synchronization, all that utilization going back and forth. And then you think about locking yourself in. You put your data out into AWS. You put your data out into Google, Microsoft, wherever it is. How do you get it back? How do you switch? how do you know that it's all gone? You don't. And so there's all sorts of different complexities because you end up getting vendored, and we call it locked in, really. And it's something that organizations don't really think about. You know, if you don't like the features or functionality over here, or there's a better price over there, you know, how do you actually move from one location to another? It's not like going and buying a new server or a new firewall or putting new malware, you know, protection in place. I mean, it is a complex project. So switching complexities, vendor lock-ins, you know, you think about costs, you think about downtime, you also think about different compromises that could happen. So there's a lot of unexpected expenses when you're going to pure play cloud. And I'm not against the cloud at all. And I think that there's specific applications, a lot of SaaS applications, a lot of different types of technologies that you can do, all sorts of different things that you can do, that you can utilize the cloud in a very secure, in a very beneficial fashion. But there's certain information that you really need to keep on premise. And so when we look at the cloud, you can look at it also as a single point of failure, right? When Google went down, and I don't know if you remember this, but the Google Cloud Services went down and they were disrupted for over 4 hours. Now that might not seem like a long time, but if you're an organization like Snapchat or Vimeo or Shopify or Discord, those types of organizations, I mean, that had, you know, millions of dollars of impact to them. So again, that single point of failure, we need to really stop and think about that. So what I really wanted to bring forward today, and again, you know, very quickly, is talking about decentralization. You know, talking about that next generation of platforms. You know, what does that look like? The decentralization of cloud, you know, with potentially AI and blockchain. You know, can it be scalable? Is it secure? You know, it is. And those are really where we need to go. Also wanted to touch really quickly on the power of edge computing, because that's really where decentralization is happening, at the edge. And basically, it eliminates the inefficiency issues that organizations have both inside as well as the cloud. It also provides additional security. And there's no absolute duplication or data duplication. And it follows data compliance and the regulations that are there. I know that I've touched on a lot of things very quickly, but I think that this is really, really important. And it's a very, very important topic that everybody needs to pay attention to and really strategize and not just put stuff up in the cloud. I'm going to be turning this over to Tom to talk about that decentralization and what can happen. But I actually, in my article for the ISO, the CISO online, I just wanted to read a quote that Tom gave me, and it basically reads as this. It says, as opposed to centralized cloud storage that requires transferring of storage duplicated files over the internet to a centralized data center located miles away, a decentralized cloud or edge computing architecture addresses the inefficiency issues of uploading, downloading, and syncing subsets of data to the limited storage capacity of the cloud servers. And this was a quote actually by the gentleman, Tom Ward, who's going to be speaking next. I'm going to turn that right over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I think we're getting through our technology issues here. Now I'm going to share my screen. So what I'm going to do is very briefly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we want to honor the time that you guys have given us on the webinar. But I want to give you a quick overview, a high-level overview to FileFlex Enterprise. And FileFlex Enterprise is a very new technology. Well, it's applying a very new technology to an issue that we've had around for a long time, and that is it's for remote access, sharing, and collaboration. But the technology that we're using is Decentralized Edge Cloud. instead of and I'm going to get into that, so I'll explain to you what that means. So that protects your privacy, gives you enhanced security, and overcomes all the issues that are present with the traditional centralized cloud technology. We were recognized by Red Herring with their, we were awarded one of the global top 100 winners for disruptive and innovative technology. Very prestigious award out there. And so I'll go on here. So what is FileFlex Enterprise? It's an on-premises cybersecurity application based upon decentralized cloud or edge cloud that provides remote access, sharing, and collaboration to your entire company-owned storage infrastructure, puts it under IT control while reducing your risk posture, improving your security profile, and minimizing ransomware attacks. There's a lot in that statement. I'm going to unpack it a little bit at a time and quickly go through it with you. So first is, if you take a look at the traditional model for cloud computing, we call this the centralized model, where you have a central server cluster, and then everybody's memory storage is syncing to that server cluster, and then people access that storage that's associated with their accounts. And this could be hundreds of users, thousands of users, millions of users, and all accessing the storage on a central server cluster. Now that central server cluster could be replicated in other geographies and to make the service better or faster when you're over in Europe or in Asia. But it's essentially centralizing that storage. It's a duplication because you've taken that storage that you have and you've put a copy of it on their servers. Now that central server, if it's operated by a third party like an Amazon or a Google or a Microsoft, that's called a public cloud, and there's different variations of that, enterprise level of public cloud that gives you some IT control on public cloud. And then if it's operated on your own premises or in an infrastructure as a service provider, it's called a private cloud because you're the only one who accesses it. Now, when it's a public cloud, you're giving that third party access to those files. They can secretly access them if they want to, and it gives you exposure to exfiltration by third parties that you don't know about, and other issues as well. So I won't go into them all right here, but the alternative to that is the decentralized cloud model. And in this model, users communicate directly with their own storage, and a little hybrid point-to-point tunnel is set up between the user and, say, the storage on their server or storage on a NAS. So everybody communicates directly to their own storage, and what the server does in the middle, it just sets up the channel. It's like a switchboard to connect users to their own storage, or it's like a policeman to enforce the policies, okay? So everything, in this case, can be kept on premises if you wanted to, and that protects your privacy because nobody can access your data secretly without your knowledge because it's on your own firewall. It's on your own storage behind your firewall. Now, the technology can also be applied to your clouds and your infrastructure as service providers as well, if you want to use them. But for privacy protection and for confidentiality, and it reduces latency and everything else. So this is the decentralized edge cloud model as opposed to the centralized model. That's the model that we use. Now, if you look at why do people buy cloud storage, the number one reason that they're going to say is they buy it for collaboration. Number two, they'll say, well, they want good file sharing and they want secure file sharing. Then they want mobile access to their files, easy access to their files. They want IT management and control. And can anybody look at this list and say, what's missing? What's a main reason why people buy cloud storage is missing? It's a redundant question, rhetorical question, I should say. And the answer is, nobody buys cloud storage because they need more storage. People don't need more storage. They get lots of storage and it's not expensive. What people want is the functionality of the cloud, not the storage itself. Okay, so they want that collaboration, file sharing, access, mobile access across devices. They're moving from a device-centric data paradigm to a data-centric paradigm. And where people aren't buying more storage, they're buying accessible storage. So what FileFlex does is it says, hey, we can make your own storage accessible storage. We can take your own storage and give it cloud functionality. We can take that corporate infrastructure and turn it into a resident virtual cloud. Give everything cloud functionality. Now you're not dealing with subsets that are synced over there and maybe under someone else's GRC and outside of your control or outside of your firewall. It puts it under your control behind your firewall and gives everything that full cloud functionality. And I'll talk a little bit in a second here about how you can also harden it at the hardware level with Intel SGX technology. Data remains in its original location. You're in control of your data. It stays on your storage. Nothing is copied to a third party or a secondary location. And it's a software solution that you add to your existing storage that's managed by your IT. So because of the software solution, we don't have to build a huge data center to sync everybody's storage to and make it all secure and man it and staff it and everything else. That's very expensive, but that's what their competitors have to do. We rely on your own storage, and the server is very inexpensive to connect you with the storage. So it gives you the lowest cost solution and the easiest solution for you to use because you're just using what you already own and invested in. Now, I'll talk a little, since this really is about security, I want to talk about the cybersecurity ecosystem that's behind FileFlex. It really is a Fort Knox type security because it brings a whole layered approach to security to your content access sharing collaboration that's unparalleled. Okay, nobody else has this level of security. They have certain features about security, but I want to talk to you about the whole infrastructure, the whole ecosystem that we use. It's layered. So the first layer is this decentralized edge cloud technology. And what that does is protects the privacy of your confidential information because you can keep things on premise behind your firewall. Nothing can be secretly exfiltrated without your knowledge. But beyond that, there's a secure patented architecture that we use that it itself is very security layered, and I can't get into this whole slide. I could spend an hour on this one slide, so I'm just going to go over it at a very high level. But we have a FileFlex server, we have a PKI server, we have a connector agent, a client, and they all use encryption and work together in various ways to protect your user data, your internal data. We use a secure token exchange and communications channel, and that all coupled together with a design is there to protect your process flow, to ensure your privacy security, and make sure that all access to your content is authorized. Now below that, we have a layer where we can actually harden the product inside the CPU, and we take advantage of the SGX technology of Intel. SGX stands for Software Guard Extensions, and what that is it's an encrypted enclave actually in the silicon that's not visible, and it's below the application layer, it's below the BIOS, it's below the OS, okay? So any malware that might be in the memory kernel can't see it because it's not visible to the memory kernel of the computer. It's in the encrypted enclave, and we use that enclave to generate the encryption keys, and that's another layer of hardware hardening that we have there that gives you like a silicon to silicon level of security. It's unprecedented. No one else has this. And then on top of that, we have a whole bunch of secure processes that we've engineered to make the security approach. So we have processes for user authentication, for secure data transmission, for accessing information, protecting credentials. We use anonymous encrypted tokens. We have processes for request management and permission management. They all work together as a layered system to protect the security of your communications. Then below that, IT is in total control. They have their own dashboard and toolkit that they can use. Layer on top, we use the Active Directory, of course, and we integrate with the Active Directory. So all your permissions you've already set up in the Active Directory are honored by FileFlex, but you can layer on top of that as well with your own. So IT is in control of what users are provisioned, what they can access. They have a full activity log so they can see what's going on. If they need to do an audit or if it's an incident management, they know what you've been shared, what you've shared, who you shared it with, when you shared it, who accessed it, who viewed it, who downloaded it. All those kind of things are all there in the audit trail. And then below that, we have the standard security feature set that I think you see with most people. So we lay on a whole bunch of security tools like two-factor authentication, device authentication, single sign-on, integration with the Active Directory, AES 256 encryption, double encryption that encrypts the data right from the sender to the receiver all the way through so it can't be intercepted and protects you, protects the security of your information. So now we'll get into how these are all critical components of ransomware. Attachments, links are critical components. If you look at ransomware, what's the #1 vector into ransomware? It is phishing. And what's the vectors in for phishing? Security vectors they use are use of links and attachments. So if you can reduce links, if you can reduce attachments, you can reduce the risk of compromise via ransomware. And that's where a product like FileFlex comes in. We reduce the links, or even can eliminate them, links and ransom, because we don't use links. Everything's done in-app, it's all user verified and user authenticated. Not a link that you can send around on social media. And then we get into Intel SGX. Like I mentioned, it gives you that secure end-to-end encryption. We use these secure enclaves of SGX to secure and protect the data. And this protects you against man-in-the-middle impersonation, snooping, and intercept, even on a system that's compromised. So my last slide here is, we have a partnership with Intel, of course, on the Intel SGX. And we prepared a large video for the Intel Salesforce, branded as an Intel video. And I took a little segment out of that video where the general manager of Intel talks about FileFlex and our use of SGX. It's better to come from his words. So I'm going to play the video for you right now, and that'll be my last slide.
This is Jim Gordon, General Manager of Client and Data Center Security Platforms at Intel, and we are pleased with Qnext as they bring their innovative FileFlex Enterprise solution to market. FileFlex is a hardened silicon-to-silicon remote access, sharing, and collaboration solution that is enabled by Intel vPro technology. Employees need to share files and organizations need to secure their data. Compatible with Intel's latest 8th generation vPro technology, Qnext FileFlex Enterprise solution uses secure enclaves to provide added protection below the application layer, below the OS layer, and below the BIOS. This enables secure file sharing at the deepest level within the silicon itself, ensuring that shared data is not snooped or tampered with at any stage of access or transmission. And as data is the value of any business, protecting it with innovative security solutions is crucial. Please visit our website to learn more about security solutions with Intel.
Okay, just on top of that, I like to say that if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. And in order to keep the webinar on time, we decided to just respond to questions in writing by email, and that'll allow us to send you an email with the follow-up and to follow up on the presentation, copies of the presentation, and whatnot. So I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity, Edge Computing Association and Paul, to present this to the audience here today. And I really appreciate all the support you've given us and the work that you're doing in advocating for edge computing and the technology itself. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tom. And Michelle, thank you. This concludes today's webinar. And the presentations themselves will be available soon on our website, www.edgecomputingassociation.com.